Good afternoon and welcome to today's press conference. Head coach Brent Thompson will come up here shortly and talk about the 2020 signing class, a combination of the 7 guys that were signed today and the 9 guys that signed during the December early signing period. Here to talk about the future Bulldogs is head coach Brent Thompson.
Thank you, John. Of course, it's a long process recruiting. It was a little bit over 11 months in recruiting this particular class. When you have 11 months in recruiting, you have a lot of people that played a huge part in it. Number one, I want to thank our staff. They put a lot of work and a lot of effort into developing relationships. Our faculty, for everything that they've done, is that we've had a great faculty representation over the last 6 years since I've been here. And then our support staff to get everything ready to go. And for National Letter of Intent Day, that can be a little bit work intensive. This year, it looks like we're going to have, at the end of the day today, about 26 total that we're going to ask to join the football program. And right now, this class is going to be added to the December class. It is an exciting class. I think it's a class that overall fits our philosophy of recruit, retain, and develop. A philosophy that we needed, a philosophy that we put into place about 3 years ago. Finding guys that we know that are going to be good fits here, guys that we know that are going to fit into not only our football system, but also our school and the development that takes place there. I think we're going to have a pretty good class here that is going to be able to matriculate and graduate is the ultimate goal for us. First of all, the number one goal, as you'll see in the first signing period in December, was specialist. I think if you look at our roster, there's no hiding the fact that we're going to graduate a very good kicker. So we needed to fill that spot. We've got 2 guys that were with us that have the opportunity to come in here and fight for the starting job. That signed in the first class. So we're excited to bring in the 2 kickers, the kicker and the punter. They're both dual guys. I think we'll give a little bit of depth at both positions, so we're excited to have those guys. The second thing that we looked at was our offensive line depth. We're starting to get a little bit thin at the offensive line, so we replaced a couple of the offensive tackles in particular. A couple of guys from in-state, a couple of guys from the state of Florida that have an opportunity to be able to come in here and have some depth on the offensive line side. The other thing that you'll notice in this class is the overall increase in size. We thought we were starting to get a little bit on the smaller side. We're trying to get a little bit larger, add some height to the group, and most importantly, on the defensive side, we wanted to get a little bit taller. We wanted to build a little bit of our depth on defense, as we're still trying to fit our personnel to our system on the defensive side, as well as add some height to that side of the ball as well. I think you'll see that in the guys that we signed in December, as well as this class in February. We're also looking to replace. We've got 2 wide receivers that are getting a little bit old. They've played a lot of snaps for us, but eventually Raleigh and Brandon will both graduate, so we had to add a wide receiver to this class. I think we've got a pretty good one, a local one, or out of the state of South Carolina at least, and a state champion, so we're excited to add him. And overall, the class, we've got 6 out of the state of South Carolina. I'm very pleased with that. 4 out of North Carolina, and Florida for the first time in a few years has been really good for us. Excited to bring 4 guys from the state of Florida. So that's going to round out our class. I'm excited to bring these guys here, as well as the rest of the guys that are going to join us probably at the end of the day today. Questions?
Aside from the specialists that you mentioned, any of these guys you think can have an immediate impact as they walk in here as true freshmen?
As far as impact goes, I hope that none of them have to have an immediate impact for us. But you're right. I think the 2 specialists will have the opportunity to come in here first and be able to at least you'll see those guys early on. But we do have some guys in here that are explosive enough. You'll see them throughout the year, I would imagine, just because of some depth issues that we're trying to fill. And then you never know how guys will progress. I think we've got some guys that are developmental guys on this roster or in this class right now. But I also think that we've got some guys in here that could have the chance to do it. Like I said, hopefully we won't find out for another year or 2 as to who do we really have to play.
When you say 26 total, kind of some walk-ons?
Yeah, we will add about 10 more walk-ons here at the end of the day. Some very, very good players that I think I'm very, very pleased to be able to bring on board as well. And I think that's going to be an important part of really just getting better with the rest of the program.
Can you talk about Tyler Cherry a little bit, what you liked about him?
Yeah, Tyler's first of all, the number one thing I liked about him was his program. He comes from a state championship program, played and understands what it's like to win a championship, and you can't ever underestimate that. Number two is he is a guy that will go get the football. He is also you don't realize is that he is the backup quarterback on that team. So when you're the backup quarterback and you're the starting wide receiver, we've got a pretty good understanding for how that goes. Is you can do a lot of different things. Is just to have another quarterback in your backfield or the opportunity to do different things with an extra quarterback on your field, I think can be very, very dangerous at times. Plus, he's a very good receiver. He caught 26 touchdown passes, had a bunch of catches throughout the year. So I'm excited. I thought that was maybe one of the bigger steals of the year for us.
And then Saul Diaz, he played on a defense that has some big-time recruits on it. How does he sort of fit in with those guys? What do you like about Saul?
Yeah, so Saul played tight end, he played inside linebacker. We're going to play him at maybe start him at the outside linebacker position, have the opportunity to move him in. Another bigger framed guy. He's almost 6'3", 210 pounds. One that we were looking to get a little bit of size in this class. Also, you've got a pretty good understanding for what the Hammond School is and their state championships. That's the other thing that we really liked about him. So played on a good team, understands what it's like to win state championships, as well as has some great height and ability.
With the offense that you run, you said you wanted some bigger guys. I'm looking at 260, almost 300 pounds for some of these offensive linemen. How big a factor is that going to play in your running game and just what you do on offense moving forward?
So on the offensive line, as we built a couple of guys, and we do have a couple of guys on this. They may be listed as defensive linemen. Carson Hatchett's a defensive lineman, but if you look at his highlight film, he does play quite a bit of offensive line. He's an interchangeable part for us, which is what I really like. Some of the bigger bodied guys that are athletic, and that's going to be really predominantly our tackle spot. I think our tackles are really the guys that are going to be a little bit taller, getting back to where we were with Isaiah Pinson, who's a really good offensive tackle for us. I think getting back to that mold is going to be able to help us out moving forward. I thought, going into this year is we had really let the offensive line go for the last couple of years, particularly on the outside positions, the offensive tackles and tight ends. So in this class, I do think that these guys are guys that can come in and add depth to us right now. It looks like we are going to be starting a newcomer at the right tackle position. It looks like left tackle should still be with Prince.
Coach, can you talk about Braden Walker? Played for a Citadel guy at River Bluff. Looks like he might be a tweener.
Yeah, Braden's interesting. I liked Braden. Braden came down and visited with us in the summertime, and he was a guy one of those guys that I wanted to have in our program. I didn't know where we were going to play him just right when we recruited him, but I know I wanted him. He's very, very mature for his age. The more that you watch him on film, the more I liked him and the more I enjoyed what he did with the ball in his hands. He is a guy that is going to run through you. He's going to be a hard runner. He runs like a B-back and kind of has the speed of an A-back, which is kind of a little bit of a point where we got to figure out where he's going to play, which is okay for us. Is at this point, I think we've got some depth at B-back. I think we've got some depth at A-back. We're going to let him develop into what he wants to develop into, and then play him at that position. I like having some versatility with him. I think if he goes anywhere above the 205 or so pounds that he's at right now, he can stay at B-back. If he stays right around the 200, 195-pound range, then he'll be an A-back for us. Yeah, after graduation, we will get them here somewhere midway through June, and then we'll spend about 4 weeks with them in June, getting them ready not only for lifting and training with us, but also for the academic rigors and a little bit of acclimation to what life is like around here without having to go through it all at one time. Then we will take a few days off. We'll give them about 8 or 9 days off, and then they'll come back for their training just prior to camp starting in August. So we signed 2 quarterbacks in this one, and the first quarterback in this class, those that know me, pocket pass kind of guys. They're going to be guys that are going to be able to do different things for us. Grayson Underwood, first of all, he signed with us in the first signing period. Came to us in the summertime. I really liked him on film. He is a hard downhill runner, but he's also another guy. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL Did not play this year, but we'll come back. We'll make a full recovery. Won't have any injury. Won't have any issues with it. We'll be back. I think he'll be back ready to go here in just a few months. A guy that can do a lot of different things for you. Can play quarterback, can play running back for you. A great locker room guy. I think he's a great addition to our program. Another guy that I just wanted in my program. Not only is he a good runner, but he can throw it. And we're going to give him a shot to play a little bit of quarterback for us and see what he can do dimensionally. He can be a good downhill runner. He was on his junior year in the state championship team. He was the running quarterback on that team. So we're excited to get him another state championship team, which is going to help us out. Devon Wells from Florida, different dynamic quarterback. And I think he's going to add to the changeup at quarterback that we're looking for here in a couple of years. A little bit more of a multidimensional. If you watch him on film, he plays a little bit of wide receiver. He plays kick returner. And then he is a running quarterback. He is our style of a quarterback. He can play underneath center, reads the triple, has an understanding of the offense. He was once recruited as a wide receiver, but when we were able to recruit him, we wanted him as a quarterback. We would like the ball in his hands. Outstanding. I think he's an outstanding football player. I think he's a steal out of the state of Florida for us. We're excited to get him in there. I think he can do a lot of different things for us at the at the quarterback position, where I think he can truly help us out.
Coach, looking at spring practice, what are the priorities this spring?
Well, number one is probably going to be developmental. I think for the first time we're going to have about 90, 91 guys playing on our roster for the spring, which is going to be nice. And it's going to allow us to develop our roster. It's not going to have to sit there and play the Raleigh Webbs of the world. Ryan McCarthy's going to be predominantly baseball in the spring. Brandon Rainey won't get a whole lot of snaps for us. Prince Howard Whitaker won't get a whole lot of snaps for us. So on the offensive side and really the defensive side is we're going to develop most of our. Willie Eubanks won't have to take a whole lot of reps. In years past, those guys would have been out there only because we just didn't have a whole lot of depth to go around, and we needed those guys to fill some positions. So what we're looking for on the offensive side is who's going to play right tackle, who's going to play the right guard position after Drew left. And we've got our ideas, and we're going to mix and match a couple of different offensive lines. Who can go in there and challenge Brandon Rainey? Who's going to be the next wide receiver that's going to be able to step up and take care of that position, develop that a little bit. We will do a little bit of scheme, but we won't do a whole lot of new scheme in there. The B-back position, we're still developing some of our younger guys. We obviously know what Clay can do. He's been the full-time starter there for a year. But we've got guys like Logan Billings there. At the A-back position, we know what Dante and we know what some of those other older A-backs can do. We need to figure out what some of the guys that we've redshirted and we've developed for the last 2 years that can do. We should have about 7 or 8 of those guys that can be able to step into that spot. On the defensive side, we're still very young. You still got guys coming back. Marquise Blunt will be back with us. We've got Dewey Green on the defensive line. You got Jay Smith. We know what Dalton can do. Dalton Owens, he's played a full year for us. We got to figure out who can replace Joe Randolph on the defensive front. We know what Chris Beverly can do, but who's the safety that's going to be able to play behind him? We know what Destin Mack can do. Who are the guys that are going to play behind those guys? Somebody's got to step in for Phil Barrett. You know, we've got Jay Howard there. We're going to move Jalen Adams over to the offensive side, play a little bit of quarterback, maybe play some A-back for us, kind of be a multi-dimensional guy for us on the offensive side. So this should be an interesting spring. It should be a fun spring where we're testing different guys at different positions. So that way when we get into the season, we get into camp, we don't have to worry or rely too much on other outside guys coming in to help us out. It has, yeah. Usually, if we're in the mid 80s, we would be in pretty good shape there. But yeah, 91, 92 guys, I think it's a good high number for us. The number one thing that speaks to is we're retaining players. Not in that 91, all those fifth years that I mentioned, and guys that are going to be fifth years, but those guys have adopted a different philosophy when it came to fifth years, that those guys have put their time in with us. Fourth year guys, they've put their time in with us. We wanted to see what those younger guys can do, and let's start to develop our roster now while we have an opportunity. And for the first time in about 2 or 3 years, I think our roster is in a good place. I think we have retained better. I think we've recruited a different player that's going to be able to be more sustainable and more retainable. And when you do that, you'll build a little bit more depth. And when you build a little bit of depth around here, you have a chance to win championships. If you look at the 2016 and the 2015 teams, we had older players and guys that had been around, and they retained really well.
So I think you were saying you don't really see a pressing need for a grad transfer?
No, I did not say that. I think we are still going to leave that option open to us. What I would like to do, though, is limit that to just one or two. I want to leave that door open to us because that is still something that we could fill some positions in with. As we done last year, I think our last year's 2 graduate fifth-year outside guys that helped us out were very good for us. Aaron was a very good football player for us, did exactly what we wanted him to do, come in and step into a role that we needed. Wherever that is and whatever we determine coming out the spring, that's exactly what we're going to fill those roles with if we can find them. And then I thought Remus did an outstanding job of coming in, and he was the leading rusher at the A-back position for us and fit in and blended in extremely well. So if I can find 2 guys like that, I felt that's a good number. 2, no more than 2 guys, I think can be a little bit more than you really want to handle at that fifth-year position. That's a good question, though.
Looking ahead to the fall, I don't think we talked about the schedule. Elon, Wofford, CSU, I think it comes in November. What do you kind of see on April?
Yeah, once again, it's challenging, and it's challenging early on for us. We've got to be on our game. We've got to be on our game early on. It's one of those things that you would like to have that schedule at least when you're older. That's the only thing that I'll take out of that is it's tough and it's challenging early, but at least you have an older roster to be able to work towards that in fall camp where you're not worried about who's going to play what. You kind of know who's going to play what and when and where. And those guys will be in pretty good condition to be able to go out there and play early on for us. This year, I thought the only problem with our schedule this past year was the late bye week, whereas going into the 2020 season, having it the 4th week is a little bit more ideal for us. You're a little bit more towards the middle of the season. When you looked at the season last year, we were playing 3 straight months. Is when you play football for 3 straight months without a bye, that can be very, very difficult and challenging. I thought we handled it as well as we could. I wish we could have handled it on the back end a little bit better, but that's the way that it goes. This year, you're almost more towards the middle of the season, even though it's kind of in the beginning part of your schedule because we'd already been here the month of August. So by the time the month of October comes around, at least you have a break. And at that point, with all of the everything else that our players go through on a normal daily basis, they need that break kind of a little bit earlier on.
Is there anybody going to miss the spring with injury?
We will have
One is going to be back.
Marquise will be back. Marquise will be back, and there will be guys that will have limited reps out there in the spring, but everybody should be out there practicing in the spring and limited reps. Mostly, like I said, mostly the 5th-year guys will, and maybe just 1 or 2 guys that had an injury that throughout the season this past year, but most of the guys will be back.
So, Brent, and this may be a difficult question to generalize about, what's the difference between the guys who signed early and the later signings?
You know, the guys that signed early are the guys that really we had been recruiting mostly since June. Those guys had been with us all the way from June until December. We had the opportunity to get those guys here. Is the number one thing that we stress here in recruiting is visiting. We want to visit you here at least 2 to 3 times. So those guys in December had visited with us, possibly for a junior day, possibly for a camp, possibly for what we call Meet the Bulldogs, kind of an invite deal where you come in here and get a real good look at what's going on here. Then we come back for a game. If you have an opportunity to come to a game, it's a great atmosphere. You get to see everything. You get to see the Corps Cadets, the football, the interaction with the fans, the environment. And then the last thing that you try to get done in December to sign those kids is an official visit. So those are all the guys that we had at least on the official visit. We had a couple of guys that signed with us that didn't follow up the official visit until February or until January. But most of those guys we had been on and we'd been pressing forward with. I thought guys that I like in my program, guys that we need in our program, they all kind of fit in there. As you notice, the first signing class had tackles in there. They had the specialists in there, the things that were very, very pressing for us, the things that we emphasized when we went out onto the road. Coincidentally, those 2 specialists were both at our specialist camp, so we knew about those guys. A couple of guys that were in our camp had signed with us.
And the second group?
Second group was a little bit of what came out. Sometimes it comes out of attrition just from one semester to the next. If you notice that going into your January recruiting, one or two guys didn't come back on your roster, you want to be able to replace those guys and replace those guys fairly early. That's number one. Number two is what you missed in your first signing class is we missed on a wide receiver, so we needed to take a wide receiver in that second signing period, as well as a quarterback, and that was more on me, the quarterback position. If I'm going to bring another quarterback into the program like we did with Grayson, I'd already kind of made my decision about Grayson. I wanted to make sure that I had the right guys, and we see the right guys. And so when we went out and we offered the two guys that we offered in the second signing period, it was based upon a feel that I needed to have with those guys. And then the other thing with the second signing period on the defensive side was, when you look back at your entirety of your film, where Coach Grantham, that was his first year going through the Southern Conference, and where did he feel that we needed to get a little bit bigger or better at? And so we changed a little bit of our philosophy in December for let's go find a bigger defensive lineman. And that's how we got KJ, a guy that could be in there. Because if you look at the league right now, you're going to have Mercer, that's a run-heavy team. You're going to have Wofford, that's always a run-heavy team. And you're going to have Furman, that's always a run-heavy team as well. You're going to have to be able to stand in there and toe-to-toe with some bigger guys in there. And then the last one is ETSU. They've become a very, very heavy run team. So I think when you look at the SoCon, if you want a chance to be able to make a push at the SoCon, you've got to be able to stop those teams and be able to win it. All right. Thank you, guys.